You're about to listen to a BBC podcast, and trust me, you'll get there in a moment. But if you're a comedy fan, I'd really like to tell you a bit about what we do. I'm Julia Mackenzie, and I commission comedy podcasts at the BBC. It's a bit of a dream job, really. Comedy is a fantastic, joyous thing to do because really you're making people laugh, making people's days a bit better, helping them process all manner of things. But, I also know that comedy is really subjective and everyone has different tastes. So we've got a huge range of comedy on offer, from satire to silly, shocking to soothing, profound to just general prattling about. So if you fancy a laugh, find your next comedy at BBC Sounds.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, bringing you up to speed on all the big talking points of the day. It's Tuesday the 21st of November. I'm your host, Alasdair Lamont, and coming up today...
Yeah, delighted to be back at the football club. It's a football club I've known really well as a player, as a manager, and something that I've looked forward to coming back for many years.
As he returns for a third spell in charge, is Derek Adams the man to turn Ross County's fortunes around? Also...
Dykes is there, Mackay! It's in! I cannot believe what I'm seeing here!
As the dust settles on Scotland's Euro 2024 qualifying campaign, we hear about the secret of Steve Clarke's success from a man who knows him well. And
it really had a huge effect on how I looked at football and how I looked at Scotland.
We find out what it's like to play for the national team at a European Championship.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Well, let me introduce today's guests. Firstly, superstar DJ and former Chelsea and Scotland winger Pat Nevin, still in the crest of a wave after that successful qualification campaign, Pat?
Yeah, I try to keep it real, as it were. One or two people I've been listening to have been kind of suggesting, it wasn't a very good end to the campaign. And I'm like, what? You've just actually lost one game away from home against the Spanish. And considering what we've had to put up with for generations almost now, it's been a brilliant campaign, and I'm really happy with Scotland fans that were actually at the game, celebrated the way they did before, during and after the game. Yeah, we didn't play our best against the Norwegians. We were missing a few players, important ones as well, but still in a high. Absolutely.
We're also joined by Peter Mackay of the Staggy's View podcast, following the news of Derek Adams' reappointment at Ross County. Are you and fellow county fans waking up today more positive about the chances of Premiership survival, Peter?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's clear from the get-go. You hear what Adams had to say as soon as he came in the door. He didn't even utter a sheer mention of the word relegation. It was all about top six and pushing on and where can he get this football club. So yeah, I think maybe mixed feelings last week after the departure of Malky, but I think this appointment's definitely got the potential to get everyone back on side, in my opinion.
Lots more to come from Pat and Peter, but first let's round up all the Scottish football news in under 60 seconds. As we'll be discussing more shortly, Derek Adams has been confirmed as the new manager of Ross County after leaving Morecambe. In the SWPL, Spartans manager Debbie McCulloch is calling for an urgent review of medical provisions at matches after Becky Galbraith received on-pitch treatment for 27 minutes on Sunday before being taken to hospital. There will be no Eintracht Frankfurt fans at Aberdeen's final UEFA Conference League game at Pittodrie after the German club were banned from selling away tickets for the match following disruption during their game with HJK Helsinki. And sticking with the Dons, their striker Bojan Majowski, who was the centre of a controversial penalty decision while playing for North Macedonia against England last night, has hit back at criticism from Jamie Carragher, replying on social media with a three-word response: blah, blah, blah.
The Scottish Football Podcast.
Well, that's the kind of incisive and articulate argument Pat Nevin can only dream of. First up today, Derek Adams has replaced Malky Mackay as Ross County manager. And here to give us his thoughts is Peter Mackay of the Staggy's View podcast. So you touched upon it already, Peter, but what do you make of the appointment?
Yeah, overall, I'm delighted. I think I was quite sceptical of the departure of Malky, as I mentioned, and didn't really see, who was going to come in and match that level of experience and know-how. But nevertheless, Roy McGregor's got his man, Derek Adams, back for a third spell. And it has to be said, there's probably no other manager out there who knows the club as well as Derek Adams does. And there's no other manager out there who's had as great success as Adams did in his first couple of tenures at the club too.
Touching on Malky and his departure, he had a brilliant first season there, managed to keep them in the league again last season, which I guess has always got to be the priority, but no wins in 9, above Livingston only on goal difference, albeit just 2 points behind Motherwell in 8th with a game in hand, just 6 behind Hibs and 6th with a game in hand. So you can see it from both points of view, but ultimately then you don't feel necessarily that Malky should have been sacked when he was.
No, I don't. Overall, I don't think so. I believe that, as you said, the underlying stats kind of show maybe, on the other hand, again, another one to add in there is that we only had 7 wins in a calendar year, which kind of tells you all you need to know, I think. But we've got a really nice run of games coming up. We've got Kilmarnock at home and St Mirren at home in quick succession, and after that, Livingston away. And I think in all 3 of those games, we can look at those as games that we could potentially be picking up points and winning. And as I mentioned to you earlier, Malky Mackay had a bit of a knack for turning it round and bouncing back from lulls that he's had in the county dugout. Obviously, it wasn't to be, but yeah, on a personal level, I think he could have been afforded a couple of games. I don't think we're in disaster territory just yet in terms of relegation. But on the other hand, maybe it was the right time from Roy, and to get it done early is maybe a good thing.
What do you see as Derek Adams' principal priorities then coming in the door just now?
To be honest, it's keeping us in the league. And although he's not said that himself, I think that's what it has to be. Success for a Ross County manager, as negative as it may seem, is just to keep us in the league, and anything thereafter is a bonus. But obviously, I think Derek has set his sights a bit higher than that. But considering the squad we've got, I think that's understandable. I think this is probably one of the strongest squads we've had in a number of years for Derek Adams to inherit. It's like, first and foremost, just points on the board, and to get us as far away from that bottom 2 places as we can be after our scare last season in the playoffs.
Well, let's just hear a little bit of what Derek Adams had to say to the media at his first news conference last night.
Yeah, delighted to be back at the football club. It's a football club I've known really well as a player, as a manager, and something that I've looked forward to coming back for many years. I've been here twice. I understand the football club, I understand the people, the supporters. If you look at my teams, and we're all about trying to get players forward into attacking areas as quickly as possible, and I always see the identity of a football team is what the manager is, and me standing on the touchline, I want to see a team create chances, score goals, and that's what I hope to see.
Pat, what about your own thoughts on Derek Adams coming in to replace Malky Mackay at Ross County?
Difficult one to ask me, because Derek's a good mate. Somebody I admire massively. I'm very biased in favour of Derek Adams. I bought him from Ross County to Motherwell to come down there. And he's just a fantastic human being to work with. I'm not surprised that he has had many successes in his career as a manager, because there's a lot of integrity there, a good sense there. Understands and knows the game well. So Peter sounding positive about it. I'm with you there, Peter, mate. and I think all Ross County fans understand what he's done before. It's a tough job. It's not going to be an easy job, but you're right. They're not far behind. Those 2 points behind Motherwell. I think he'd like to get back up there quite quickly. So for Ross County fans, yeah, reason to be excited, because he's got lots and lots of good contacts, and he'll use them well to get the best players he can for Ross County, if he can survive, not be left adrift too quickly.
The Euro 2024 qualifiers finish tonight, and it marks the end of a remarkable campaign for Scotland. Pat, you were at Hampden the other night. Yeah, we finished with 2 draws, but overall, what have you made of the campaign?
The campaign, I was almost going to say it couldn't have gone better, but there are moments in that campaign that you probably never forget if you're a Scotland fan, but even just watching football. That moment over, or those 2 moments over in Norway, when we were 1-0 down and we got those 2 late goals, I cannot think about it without big cheesy grin on my face. Now, it may well be that they took Haaland off, but, for us to kind of hold on and then really go for the jugular, as it were, right at the end of that game, get those points and win us that game. I mean, you can't ignore the fact that we beat Spain 2-0. It's brilliant. We beat them at home. And we were competitive with them when we went down to Seville as well. So, the whole campaign, but I look at it in a wider sense. How does the group look? And you look all over it. We played against the Norwegians the other night there. We didn't have our three most important fullbacks, stroke wing backs. And they're the most important part of our team, I would argue. Yeah, along with McGinn, obviously. But the wing backs and the width they gave us and the positivity they give us. And to have no Hickey, Tierney or Robertson, but still be competitive. I was really impressed by that. And it shows you how much strength and depth that Stevie Clarke's been able to bring into this group.
Yeah, I mean, the players are clearly a massive part of it. And we do have players that we can call upon now that we maybe haven't had the quality in that sort of depth for a generation or two. But the manager's clearly been massive and central to it. And you know him well. You probably know him as well as anyone and for as long as anyone in football terms. And he's not a guy who shows his emotions too much. And I just wonder how close to the man that we, the media and the public see, is he to the real Steve Clarke? Is it a case of what you see is what you get?
Do you know when every now and again you get a little glimpse of the humour, don't you? It's a kind of, it's a slight smile, and he'll kind of give it back if because what he doesn't like, I suspect, like most managers don't like, is a lot of the questions, they are tricks. Do you think A or B? It's quite common. And, both of them, those answers, yes or no, has a problem for you. And he gets asked them all the time, and I watch him do it, and he just looks as if I'm not answering that like that. Life and football's more nuanced than that. So if you feel as a manager that, wait a minute, I'm a hostage to fortune if I make one misstep, then you try not to get carried away. Remember, Dalglish used to do it for years and years and years as a manager. So they're not really as dour as that. They're not really, he's not the most effervescent character all the time, but there's a lovely dry humour that Clarkie's got. And when he's happy and jumping about and, we score the goals and Scotland scores the goals, have a look at him then. A lot of the time, that's not hidden. You can't hide that sort of excitement. So I know there's more to Stevie than that, but it has to be slightly hidden because he's portraying something that the players have to see, which is someone who is trustworthy, someone who is steady, and someone who's not going to put them in a difficult position. And if that means he comes across a wee bit more dour than he really is, then so be it. That's kind of worth it. I think that's the way he thinks.
And what for you has been the secret of what has been quite a gradual success with Scotland?
The lovely thing is we've given them time. We've given the group time. We've given the management group time. Because you don't do things right away. Everybody, in the days of social media, you know what it's like. One bad game, told you so, he's rubbish, sack him. It's just where we are. But, they've stuck by him. There was a difficult time right at the start as well. And also, I'm not saying the mistakes, but he has a couple of problems, to overcome. I mean, they seem so obvious now, but for a long time, we couldn't figure out how to get Tierney and Robertson in the same team. Well, they look brilliant now when they're playing together. There's for the longest time. Now, think of the situation, the problem that is Scott McTominay, right? And people didn't know how to get the best of him, including Manchester United, who were training with him every day. And then Clarkie gets and thinks, oh, actually, he is more suited to being an attack-minded midfielder, arriving in the box and adding that as well. Now, it took a wee while for that because he was left centre-back, right centre-back, deep-line midfield. In fact, he was back deep-line midfield against the Norwegians during the week there. But Clarkie saw that, actually, that's where your strength is. And what a season, what a year it's been for McTominay and a Scotland trip. But now Manchester United have said, oh, yeah, good idea. Well, Stevie Clarke spotted that without saying them, So there's been things like that where you think, right, okay, you're getting it, you're understanding it. And although we get annoyed with, and we upset a little bit that we don't have an out-and-out goal scorer. Well, if you don't have an out-and-out goal scorer, you don't have an out-and-out goal scorer. Find another way. And what we've managed to do over the last while is find another way, which is playing someone like Che Adams, who won't be scoring millions of goals. But I'll tell you what, it makes space for everybody else. Like McGinn to run into, and all the players that want to go into that space. So, it's been clever and it's taken a wee while, but it's been a kind of upward trajectory the whole way, hasn't it?
You're listening to the Scottish Football Podcast.
There aren't many people to have played at a European Championship for Scotland, but Pat is one of them, so we thought it'd be interesting to find out what that experience was like. Pat, cast your mind back, Euro 92. How do you look back on it?
Well, first of all, I'd been disappointed because I'd been very close to getting to 2 World Cups before that as well, in the squad just beforehand, and dropped out and then back in again straight after them. So I was very keen to get to a major championships. But I actually got there, and unbeknownst to me, but kind of slightly known, I actually was playing with a broken ankle, which is kind of not easy and not what you want. It was a kind of stress fracture. So, I got there feeling good beforehand, but having had this, injury just in the build-up game, but I was not going to let it stop me. I could run, I could dribble, I could play 10-yard passes, but I couldn't do any long passes. So to get through that was hard. So in a personal way, I was dealing with that. But in the bigger side, it really had a huge effect in how I looked at football and how I looked at Scotland, because what a group we had. You actually couldn't have made a more difficult group. It was incredibly difficult. We had the world champions, we had the European champions, and we had Russia, as they were called then, CIS. So it was a tough one that we were handed, and the quality of players we were playing against. But my attitude, along with the rest of the Scottish team, was bring it on. We fancied ourselves against these teams. We didn't care that they were, among, if not the best in the world as teams. So there was that excitement of it. And maybe, in hindsight afterwards, one or two of us were a wee bit disappointed that we didn't have more of a go, more open and attack-minded football against the Germans in particular in the first half, and maybe against the Dutch as well. But to go on that stage and to be against the very, very best, it's where every decent footballer was. And at the time, we had a lot of players playing for Celtic, Rangers, but also, Liverpool's and Leeds United, who were top team at the time as well, like Gary McAllister. We didn't go out thinking anyone could beat us. So that's the kind of attitude I think that Stevie Clarke wants to bring back with this group. Don't care who it is. We fancy a go at you. Scotland, I don't know if we've really had that true belief for a long time, but certainly as a group, we had that.
Yeah, and of course, Denmark went on to win it. Greece won it in 2000. You've mentioned Wales, who got to the semis in 2016. So that's got to be a level of inspiration for Scotland that, that surprises do happen.
Yeah, the shocks do happen. Players are certainly some national teams. They've got 2 or 3 players they absolutely heavily rely on. If they have a bad time and have a bit of an injury, that can help you as well. I tend to look at it in terms of, would you really want to play against Scotland? I'm not sure you would. I really don't think most teams would like it. And when you've got the Tartan Army and the numbers that they're going to be there as well, it's something that's, the excitement will grow. And if you look through our team, do you think McGinn fears anyone? Do you think Robertson fears anyone? Do you think Tierney fears anyone? You go through it, McTominay, they don't care. They think they can take on anyone because they play for teams that do take on anyone. And that is the mentality that Clarkey wants to get in that squad in its entirety.
Well, that's us for today. Thanks for listening. And if you've got any comments or questions, you can now get in touch with us via our new email address, scottishfootball@bbc.co.uk. And you can get us wherever you get your podcasts. So if you haven't done so already, just search for the Scottish Football Podcast and hit subscribe. My thanks to my guest Peter Mackay of the Staggy's View podcast, and of course DJ extraordinaire and sometime football pundit Pat Nevin. Bye for now.
A reminder, Behind the Goals with me, Rachel Corsey and Leanne Crichton is now available every Tuesday. Make sure you tune in every week for all things women's football and plenty of special guests. Just search Behind the Goals on BBC Sounds.